All right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Assistant National Legislative Director Marquis Barefield. I will be leading this webinar this afternoon. This is an update for the Major Richard Starr Act, which is HR 1282 in the House and S 344 in the Senate. Joining me this afternoon is the complete ledge team to include our National Director, Ms. Joy Elam, our Deputy Director, Shane Learman. I've already introduced myself, the other Assistant National Legislative Director, John Retzer, Associate National Legislative Director, Naomi, and our support team of Lisa and Jeanette. So the whole team is here with you this afternoon, and we are glad that you're here. We will give you the information about the Major Richard Starr Act here in a moment, and then we also have a special announcement about another key piece of legislation that's going to be introduced before the end of the month. And then our wonderful legislative director will talk about another key important piece of information that we would like for you to know that happened last week, but there are some things that we need to do as housekeeping to make sure that we can bring things back into focus and get our legislators, specifically those in the Senate, back on board with information that should have been taken care of then, but I'll let her talk about that when the time comes. Right now, I'm just going to give you a quick update about the Major Richard Starr Act. For those that don't know, the Major Richard Starr Act legislation would allow retired pay to be given to those who were injured in combat, so they could receive not only their VA compensation, but they would also be eligible to receive their retired pay from their former branch of service. This legislation has been introduced a couple times in previous Congresses, and they thought they were going to be able to get it passed during the last Congress, but it fell just a few votes short. But right now, we have the needed co-sponsors in the House. We have over 290 co-sponsors in the House, and we have 63 co-sponsors in the Senate so far. And we're still working to get additional co-sponsors, not only in the House, but also in the Senate. We have a coalition of veteran service organizations that are working together, going basically building by building, office by office, going and making sure that every elected official knows to support this legislation and what good it would do for the veteran community, especially those that fall underneath that umbrella that were combat injured and could not complete their 20 years of service if they chose to do so. So it's very important that your legislators become co-sponsors of this important piece of legislation. We did a quorum campaign on April 11th, and as of this morning, there have been 27,607 emails sent to elected officials to make sure that they are co-sponsors of this legislation. So I would ask you all, if you could, just to make sure that your elected officials have become co-sponsors for this legislation, reach out to them and make sure that they know how important it is for those that are combat injured and cannot receive their retired pay, but would obviously love to receive their retired pay. Make sure that they understand the importance of the Major Richard Starr Act. And with that being said, I also have a special announcement about a bill that's going to be coming out by the end of the month from Representative Gallego from Arizona. This deals with those that may have received separation pay. This legislation would ask that veterans who receive separation pay from when they left service be able to not have to repay that money. They would be able to keep their separation pay and keep their VA compensation without any offset. The representative's office reached out to me and Shane last week and mentioned that they're going to reintroduce this bill. They haven't given it a bill number yet, so as soon as we get a bill number and we get the language that goes with the bill, we'll be drafting an alert and have that sent out for everybody to see and, of course, take action on when it comes about. And that way your representatives will know to support that legislation as well. Before I turn the rest of the webinar over to Joy for her announcement, I just want to know, are there any questions pertaining to the Major Richard Starr Act? Any questions or concerns out there about the legislation that we're asking you to support if you had? If you have any questions, please raise your hands and I will recognize you and we'll go through. Karen, I see you have your hand up. Please go right ahead.
Yes, question on how this, I know it's gonna help the veterans, but how are they going to go through? Are the veterans gonna have to actually file to start receiving the concurrent if it goes through, or how is the process gonna be? Because I actually know quite a lot of veterans who fall in that category.
Right, thank you for the question. The main thing is once the legislation is passed and enacted, they will probably ask DOD to furnish some of this information to see who's on Chapter 61. And then a lot of the veterans probably will be raising their hands saying, hey, I fall underneath that umbrella. They'll probably come to the VA and show their retirement orders if they still have them in their possession to be able to say, I think I qualify for this. I was injured during combat operations or injured in combat and was a Chapter 61 retiree because of it. And add me to the rolls. That way their DOD benefits can be paid to them as well as their VA compensation.
And they will have the option, because if they are already in receipt of CRSC, they don't have to elect to receive the Chapter 61 medical disability retirement pay for combat. They could still receive the CRSC. So it will include an election. We don't know how it'll work because they haven't passed it into law yet. So we're going to make DOD kick the can on down the road on this one.
Right. Any other questions out there? Don't be shy. Raise your hands if you're not sure. We are here to pass information and it's free. All right. Any questions about it's called the Restore Veterans Compensation Act. So that's the formal name for it. Restore Veterans Compensation Act. That's the one that deals with allowing veterans to keep their separation pay and their VA compensation. So any questions about that piece of legislation? All right, Karen's the big winner today. She's the one bold enough to put her hand up, so go right ahead.
All right, only because I'm working with a veteran in a neighboring town on this. They're already starting to take pay from him. Is that going to be reimbursed to him, or is he just totally out the money that they've taken so far?
When you say they're taking money from him, what do you mean?
Because he falls under this. They're taking.
Oh, they're taking his
Separated,
compensation.
right?
Right,
taking
out
his
of his
compensation.
disability pay.
Yeah. So I don't know how that's going to work since he's currently doing it, but I'm pretty sure once the legislation becomes law, there'll be a provision, or we'll advocate for a provision to be in there to stop that or to be able to reimburse him those funds.
Yeah, it might, I haven't seen the draft, but it would depend on if they do have, at the date of, if they provide a date in there, once the law passes, if it's from that time forward, or if there's any retroactive
Right.
provisions in there. So it will depend on that, I would assume.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, Marquis, looks like we got a question text sent to us. Why is it that DAV's legislative team rocks so much?
Oh, that's easy. We all get along and we all like each other, and we're very compassionate about what we do. So that's an easy question. Very easy question. All right. So now that I don't see any more questions, I am going to turn the presentation over to our fearless leader, Ms. Joy Elam. Take it away.
Thanks, Marquis. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to see everybody this afternoon. I just wanted to give everybody an update. We sent out an alert and we had a great response. 17,000 emails went out on S326. And originally, S326 was the VA Medicinal Cannabis Research Act, but the bill was amended and it became a minibus, so to speak, where it included 4 other pieces of legislation in it. There was It included the Commitment to Veteran Support and Outreach Act, the Elizabeth Dole Home Care Act, the Native American Direct Loan Improvement Act, and the Respect Act, in addition to the Cannabis Research Act. So those 5 bills were, it was amended, put together, and the Senate ran that out for a vote. It was a cloture vote, which is the first procedure in them to consider legislation. And they were expecting, it was Senator Tester's bill. It had bipartisan support with Ranking Member Moran. And they expected it to go forward because the legislation had been passed out of committee, the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee previously with unanimous consent. Unfortunately, something went awry. There's a couple stories out there about what happened, but you know, some members started objecting to, they said they were had concerns about the Medicinal Cannabis Research Act. Others said they, you know, had some concerns about being able to add additional amendments. All in all, though, the vote failed with 42 senators voting nay on the bill. Senator Tester and his team told us, you know, they were caught off guard about that one. They're not sure what really happened. You know, a lot of political things are happening right now. They even offered to remove the cannabis provision. They also said the floor had been open for amendments and debate. So this was just a procedural vote, what they call a cloture vote, which was just allowing the bill to come up for consideration before the Senate. So they were obviously very disappointed that the legislation, the cloture vote failed. And their plan is to try and really ramp up pressure to get this bill back on the floor. And to do that, they have to have the votes. So John is sharing the screen now, and the sections in red there were the nay votes on the different senators who voted nay. Now, what was also interesting was a number of the senators who were in the committee, the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, who voted yes on the vote, unanimous consent, when it came out of committee, voted no on it. So, you know, sometimes these things happen. I would mention Senator Schumer, the leader in the Senate. You see that he had a nay vote there. Now that's just for procedure purposes. He had to change his vote to nay so they can reintroduce it for another cloture vote when they want to reintroduce it. So other than that, we talked about doing another campaign, an alert campaign, to try and put some pressure on the veterans, the senators who voted no, and doing some outreach. And the VSO community is sort of working on this collectively. So the Legion and VFW and IAVA and others. And I think we've come to the conclusion we're going to do one of our phone call, basically making a phone call to the member's office. And so we're working on an alert right now, which will explain this. What happened is that, you know, this vote failed and these veterans bills are sort of in limbo, and we really want to have the opportunity for them to be brought to the floor to be considered and voted on. Bipartisan legislation, again, supported by both the chairman and ranking member of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. So be on the lookout for that. We're thinking about doing that maybe next Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon. And we will provide just a link where once you click on that link, it will take you to the call for your senator specifically. And we're just going to target those that voted no. And we'll have a little script that you would read. And basically the person answering the phone is one of their clerks, their assistants. And they just record those voice messages for the member, for their senators. And then at the end of the day, they share that call sheet and they'll say, you know, we had so many calls from constituents on S326 asking you to vote yes on it when it comes to the floor for a vote. So it's real simple. They're not going to ask you questions about it or, you know, try to explain anything, although we'll have that information about what the bill does again in the little lead up information to the actual script for the calls. So we hope that we can count on you to try and get a good number of calls. We've only done this, I think, once before. Shane did one of these. It was during our midwinter conference, and I think it was on, was it Blue Water Navy? No, it was
No,
on,
we did it last year during the PACT Act.
oh, during the PACT Act.
I think it was in June or July of last year.
Yep. So, you know, if 600, 700, 800 calls go to, you know, different various members' offices and they get, you know, the different VSOs, everybody's doing the same thing. So hopefully collectively we'll have a good number of people reaching out and put a little pressure on them to move this legislation forward. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Also, you know, we're going to be starting to prepare for convention here shortly. National convention is just right around the corner. So resolutions have already started to come in. I think we logged our first 24, Lisa said, that came in from Minnesota, nice and early. And just a reminder about where we ask that you submit those resolutions to. We have a specific, in the letter that we sent out, is it DAV legislation, Lisa?
I was going to save that for a question when you were done. I wanted
Okay.
to see if anyone was paying attention to their letter when they got it.
Okay.
I was going to ask the question, where do you send your resolutions to? And I was going to see if somebody was going to be able to tell us the right answer before I put it in the quote box. And Karen, I'm not going to be biased. I'm going to eliminate you since you asked 2 questions already. And if you work for the staff, Lisa's raising her hand, you can't answer either. So we're just going to see if people were paying attention to their letters. Where do your resolutions go to? So I want to see if somebody can raise their hand and answer that question. Where do you send your department resolutions once they've been adopted and signed off on? Where do they go?
And we're trying to get people to make sure they send them to the specific email address, because in years past, one of the things that happens is all of a sudden I'll get a call from Ed Hartman down at our other headquarters, or some other director and membership from Doug saying, we just got a packet of resolutions here and we're not sure what to do. What should we do with them? And we're always nervous that they're going to get lost, not be considered. Whenever we receive the resolutions, you will receive a confirmation letter back with the number of resolutions that we received, and Lisa sends those out just so that if the numbers don't square up, you have an opportunity to get that rectified. But we really hope that everybody will be encouraging their departments to, you know, submit a few resolutions. Lisa has offered, she's sort of calling departments ahead of time where their department conventions are coming up, and asking them if they have any resolutions, or if not, and they would like a few that we'd like to see come in again for consideration. We're happy to send those to you as well. But it's important that we receive a good, you know, package of resolutions for consideration with all the convention committees. So please be the advocate as the BBTs that you are, that you're leading the charge on that, at least, you know, and much appreciated. So I still don't see any hands. I don't know if anybody came up with the magic email yet and found their letter.
Well, I see Al's got his hand up. Shay's got a facial expression looking like, oh, so without looking in the chat box, where do the resolutions need to come? And I'm gonna
I
say,
knew it was gonna be Al. I knew it.
yeah, I'm gonna say Al for last. So I'm gonna see if somebody else has got their hand up.
Kenny does.
Okay, so I see Kenny Blue, and then I see the picture just changed, and I see BS Guiding Light. I see you have your hand up. So between you and Kenny, let us know, where do the resolutions go after they've been adopted and signed off on by your department?
Resolutions at DAV.org.
DAV.org.
So be honest with me. Did you cheat and look in the chat box, or did you know?
Oh, I knew. We have 7 already ready for our convention, which is next week.
Outstanding. So as your department conventions get ready to convene, make sure that not only do you read your resolutions and have your departments adopt them and sign off on them, but make sure that you send them to the appropriate place, because as my boss mentioned, we don't want to get packages from Ed Hartman. We don't want them from membership. We don't need Mark sending us a packet saying, hey, they got sent to me by mistake as well. Please send them through resolutions@dav.org. Please and thank you.
Yep. And remember the deadline as well. We hope that after you have your department convention, you know, might take you a day or two to get things all in order, but that you'll send them promptly for us. As you know, we usually get, you know, upwards of 400 plus resolutions, and all the things that have to happen with those, getting those stamped and logged and put into the appropriate convention committees, and coming up with the advisors' recommendation sheets. All of that happens, you know, as we get things in. And you know, Lisa and our team is all involved in that. So the earlier the better for us, if that you can send them. And if you
The
have,
deadline is July 22nd. The absolute deadline. That's the final day to get them in.
yep. So that's, and you know, we have to wait until they all come in to do our final run throughs of everything. So if your convention's on one of the late periods, we usually call the department ahead of time, try to make sure that those resolutions, if you know you have some to be considered, we know they're coming, we hold off until we receive those for you. But now that we're sending those via email, I mean, you can send them in, mail them, but you know, again, with the mail the way it is these days and the delays that occur, that sometimes that's a little, you know, we don't want to have you miss the deadline. So if you do have a late convention, please, you know, tell your leadership to be mindful of that we get them, and you let us know they're coming so we can be on the lookout.
And not to overstate it, but if you do try to mail them, I understand, we've talked to the post office, the mail system will blow up. The only way to submit them is through resolutions@dav.org. The only way, the only possible way. Any other way, and it's potential to rip a hole in the space-time continuum. So please email those to where?
Resolutions.
@dav.org. Thanks.
All right. All right. Any questions from anybody on S326? The bill is now named, with the amended version, is the Elizabeth Dole Veterans Program Improvement Act. And again, S326 was the original bill, was the VA Medicinal Cannabis Research Act. So sometimes if you look it up, it might still show as that, but it has been amended and marked up and includes those other pieces of legislation in it. So, all right. I do want to open the floor just for, or ask Shane, did you have anything you wanted to mention? We do have a couple hearings coming up, but
Al LaBelle has his hand up.
oh, where's
We
Al?
can go to
There's
Al first.
Just a couple of comments. You mentioned it was cannabis that was the objection. but on social media, which may not be the best source going, but it's how I get a lot of information. Some people were objecting to the Elizabeth Dole Act. Any comments on that, or are you aware of it, or?
Yes. So, you know, we were a little bit surprised on of some people saying they were concerned about a Medicinal Cannabis Research Act, because again, it is just research. It's not authorizing use of cannabis or anything. But there is a group out there, I think it's Warriors something, that has had this really negative campaign about the Elizabeth Dole Home Care Act. And what they did put out didn't seem like they really understood what the bill would do. And so everybody was a little bit confused about that. We did see, though, that they've got a big campaign, you know, telling members. So, you know, the Senate folks are aware of that. They're trying to make calls, trying to answer any questions they can. I mean, it really just expands, you know, options for veterans to be able, you know, who use long-term care services. So you know, we don't know who that group is. They're not in the conventional VSO groups that kind of talk shop and policy, you know, behind the scenes. So, but, you know, there were a number of, you know, like I said, excuses that, or, you know, that members came up with that said, well, why they voted no. But it was unusual because it was voted out of their committee unanimously, and some of those senators then went ahead and voted no.
But to be clear, Al, nobody told us that they voted against it because of the Elizabeth Dole Act. That wasn't a reason the senators were trying to stop it or to kill it. And here's what's really more mesmerizing. Some of the senators had their own bills in these packages that they introduced and sponsored, and they voted against the package. So long story short, we believe that this was politically motivated and not anything real specific to any of the bills.
And I think, Al, to your question, what's happened is obviously we had some campaigns that went out with regards to Elizabeth Dole, the Home Care Act and such. So Joy is right. The group's name is actually Veterans Warriors, One Family, One Fight. And they are in partnership with the Veterans Caregiver is their initiative. So they are the ones that have been publicizing a 4-page legislation that's working its way around. So that's probably what's happening, is it kind of getting muddled up in everything that's happening on the Hill.
I just have one more comment about the telephone campaign that you're talking about, and we did participate in it with the PACT Act. When we called our senator's office, one of them, when you call a Washington office, which I believe was the number we had, all we got was a what do you call it, a recording. So we ended up calling his state office, and we did get human beings. So I don't know if that's something to consider or not.
And I think too, I mean, if you happen to get it when it's on voicemail, I think you can still leave a message, and hopefully that would be conveyed, because they'll look at their voicemail after and you know, tally it up. But that's another opportunity if, you know, you want to have a direct message and make sure it gets through. The local office should be able to convey that as well.
And unfortunately, out of the way the system is set up, we can only elect one number. And since they're in session, that's why we want everybody to call here in DC.
The only reason I brought it up was some of our members were kind of put off when they only got a voicemail. So they, on their own, basically started calling the state office. But, you know, it's just an option that I'm throwing out there. And I understand.
But that says a lot about your senator if they're having the phone calls go to voicemail, not about the way we're trying to campaign, Al, right?
It sure did, and they certainly had negative opinions, but they still were enough motivated that they wanted to talk to a human being. I'm just throwing it out there as an option for other people. I understand the technology limitations.
Great. Well, I'll open it
Okay.
up to the floor, just, if anybody has anything that they wanted to talk about, like I said, we're gonna be preparing for national convention. We've got department conventions that our team will be going to over the next month or more. And before you know it, we'll all be in New Jersey together. So we're making progress on all of our critical policy goals this year. And our numbers are really good through the Commanders Action Network, the number of emails that have gone out total. Shane, was it like almost 300,000? It was like
I think we have effectively broke 300,000 emails,
Before
All-
Tuesday, it was 296,000.
and 7,500 went out on Tuesday.
great.
So we broke 300,000, and the important thing to note is that was our goal last year, and we hit 450. So we upped the ante, and you guys are doing a great job getting the information out, getting your membership, your networks involved. 300,000 emails already sent through the Commanders Action Network in the beginning of May is outstanding. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Excellent. And our emails, get shared around as well, and other VSOs use them. And I think it's inspiring others. And now just the political climate that we're in, it takes us all to work collectively on these campaigns. And we try to do that behind the scenes, and everybody's rowing in the same direction, trying to, make sure everybody's aware of the legislation that's being put out. And we just don't want to get caught up in the, politics of things. We want to make sure our members know, we have one, mission and message in mind, which is to keep the promises to those who served. And the legislation, we want them to work in a bipartisan manner. And we've been fortunate, we know Senator Tester and Moran have a very good relationship. So again, though, as things lead up to a, national, campaign season and presidential campaigns and all of that, things just get more and more, you get the political rhetoric on both sides, and people's communications start breaking down, and we start to see things sort of fall apart. So it's up to us to really keep pushing forward, holding your members, elected officials accountable, asking them, what was the reason. If there's an issue with a bill or a piece of legislation, usually it's pretty vetted through committees and hearings and roundtable discussions and other things. And when they put something on the floor, they, expect that, they've got the votes to put it through. But we're going to probably see more and more of this. Going to just have to fight a little bit harder, and grassroots advocacy is going to be more important than ever. So I don't have anything more, and I'm not sure if any of the other members of the team, John or Naomi, have anything, or Shane, that you just wanted to mention before we wrap it up.
No, I'm good, Joy. Nothing additional for me to add. John?
I'm good at this time. Thank you, Joy.
Naomi?
Nothing for me. Good to see everyone.
Okay. All right. If there's no further questions, again, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and we'll be letting you know about the next webinar. And I think, we'll make sure we put that together. I don't want to spoil our surprise, but anyway, we're trying to have do a couple new things for all of you. And so stay tuned, stay posted, and we'll let you know when the next one is.
All right.
Everybody have a great afternoon. Take care.